Hi, thank you for having me. This is so cool. I'm so distracted by this little world, but I know that's not my job today. I have to stay focused.
No, no, that's
Yeah,
okay. I mean, we are all here to be excited and
Great.
feel like
I've been
not
looking,
be too formal
oh,
about anything. So it's cool.
good. I've been looking so forward to this. So far, this has been like, I don't know why. Well, I do know why, because you all are really sweet and like the promotion's been amazing. Everything about this feels different from some of the talks I'm used to giving. So I'm just really, yeah, really happy to be here.
Thank
great.
you.
I'm just gonna play some music while waiting for other
Sure.
people. Then we can start in a couple minutes. Yes.
Questa è una canzone per AI. No, questo è sì.
Someone's asking something. Maybe you want.
Something is the way you treat me like you don't. Too competitive when it feels so obvious to me. We can lay by the lake, bring your body in. Too competitive to say, oh now it's your love is a prayer. Baby, I'm on my ground. We're gonna make this alright. Oh, you know my ground. Baby, I'm on my ground. We're gonna make this alright. Remember all the days you left me by the phone. You had to hesitate. Now you are not second you must have shown me out. Go to hands with someone else. If people got it out, see the signs you be giving me. Sometimes people say we just run away, but we keep coming back. Yeah, to who we are. Our mistakes make us great. Shine your glow.
Request you to unshare your screen until we start.
We're already almost 30 people, so I think we can slowly start. And I would like to ask if Emily, can you unshare your screen? Then we share again when we start. Great. Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for coming today, and we're really excited to be together. And I would like to inform that we will be recording this event. So I would like to inform you all in case anyone is uncomfortable with that or doesn't want to appear in the recording. And you can always reach us if you have any concerns about the recording as well. And you can find the chat in the bottom right corner, where we will be posting some links and info and also some fun nonsense probably. And please feel free to use it. And to introduce myself, I'm Sinem, the events lead of AIxDesign, an independent organization and a community of geeky designers, creative techies, and curious minds who are exploring the intersection of design, AI, machine learning, and data. And before starting the event and introducing our speaker, we would like you to get familiar with Getter. And for that, I'm going to guide you through the comments, some key comments. You can use your arrow keys to move around, if as you already noticed probably. And you can press Z to dance a bit, like I'm doing right now. And you can press F to throw some confetti. And you can use press X to interact with objects. And you will also notice that you will be able to interact, talk, and see each other when you walk towards someone, if cameras and microphones are on, of course, or if you're in the same space. I'm going to send the comments in the chat as well, in case you missed it. 1 second. Yes. And we also would like you to customize your appearance from the bottom left corner next to your video. Please click on the little pen there and then pick change character option. I will be sending the guidance on that in the chat as well just now. So we're asking you to customize your hair color based on your knowledge of AI and coding, as if you don't know anything about coding and AI and if you're a beginner, make your hair red. And if you know a little and feeling a little intermediate, make your hair blue. If you're rocking in coding and you code professionally, please make your hair green. And please customize your top cloth based on your mood today, as if you're living your best life today, make it purple. If you're saying it is a Friday, so trying to stay positive, please make it gray. And if you're thinking life sucks, make it black. But if you're saying life was sucking before, but you're making my day, please make it yellow, so you shine like a sun. So I'm gonna give a little time for everyone to customize the look. And meanwhile, I can start introducing Emily, our dear guest today. And today we'll be hosting Emily Martinez for their talk, Reclaiming Pleasure Through Failure, as part of our AI Playground program led by Ambika, aka Computational Mama. Hello, Emily and Ambika.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. And I would like to introduce Emily shortly. Emily Martinez is a new media artist working with machine learning, queer technologies, new economies, and consensual tech. They're a first-generation immigrant refugee from Cuba to Miami and a self-taught coder who believes in the tactical misuse of technology. Emily's work has been exhibited internationally, mostly as a collaborator with Anxious to Make and Cure AI. Their latest project, Unsupervised Pleasures, is a do-it-yourself community library and practice space that uses queer technologies, glitch feminism, decolonial, and other non-normative frameworks to unmake things with AI. When Emily is not working, they're learning to love and doing their energy work. Welcome again, Emily. Glad to be having you. And I'm sending some links in the chat. So if you would like to learn more about Emily's work. And also a link about our dear program lead Ambika's work. And this behind the scenes artist talk is the 4th event of the AI Playground program led by Ambika. And it is funded by Stimulating Funds Creative Industry. And it is part of the text team among 4 main teams we will be having, as image, moving image, music, sound, body poses, and text words. And under each team, we will be having one behind the scenes talk, like today, and one workshop. And you can follow our social channels and have an eye on our Eventbrite page for other talks and events that we will be having as part of the program, and also our other programs as well this year. I'm also leaving some links in the chat again, where you can find us and where you can find about all the upcoming events. Please keep an eye on them. And also led by our program content lead, Caterina Rodriguez, we will make the explorations and learnings of each AI Playground topic accessible to the wider community with a public guide. And this guide will contain an introduction to each discipline, inspiration projects, and creative suggestions for how the viewer can expand the subject further. And the workshop participants and talk participants will have a chance to join a Slack channel and can also provide suggestions on what they would like to see in this guide. And additionally, there will be an online graduation show we're planning for later in the year, where all the workshop participants will have a chance to display the work they developed in those sessions. And more details will be announced on the respective Slack channels, as I mentioned, and you will be receiving a mail on how to join that Slack channel shortly after the workshop. Please do not hesitate to ping me also privately if you would like to join that channel for contributing to the guide. We welcome all sorts of contributions, and I'm leaving the link to join the Slack. And after you join the Slack, you can ping me, and I will add you to the respective channel. Now, after the long introduction, I finally would like to leave the stage to Emily for the exciting talk. Hello again, Emily. The stage is yours.
Okay, great. Let me screen share. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. I don't have a title slide, but what I'm gonna talk about today, and once again, thank you all for having me. I've been looking really forward to this. So at some point, if you all can give me a time check, because I did not time this at all, and I wanna make sure I cover things. But what I'm gonna talk about today are broadly 3 different projects. They all kind of have relationships to one another, like there's been an evolution. So the first one is Queer AI, which is where everything began. There's another project called Ultimate Fantasy, and a third one called Unsupervised Pleasures. So this first slide is from Queer AI, which is a project I started working on in 2018 with collaborator Ben Lurchin. And for this one, we created a chatbot trained on a corpus of queer theater. When we started the project, both Ben and I were building bots, and I was learning the history of chatbots. I was looking at like the applications in consumer products, and among these were like these sexting bots that were being used on adult websites, but also just regular, like the regular assistants that we all have in our phones and our devices. And of course, what I was noticing was that all of them embodied these like heteronormative, racist, misogynist tropes. There were all the subservient fembots. There wasn't a lot of consent. So we wanted to make something that was the opposite of this, something that went against the cultural logic of like the binary subject and like the whole, there's this historical logic in computing of command and control. So this meant even going against our own desire of making like the most coherent or intelligible bot. We were thinking that there was something already inherently queer in the machine learning process because there's just, these hidden layers, there's unpredictable output. So anyway, we wanted to create a bot that embodied the messiness of the technology as well as the messiness of like relationships and bodies and identity that we were introducing through the corpus itself. And then, can you see the full slide? Can you check that? So I can't really tell on my end if it's visible.
Yeah, I can see it.
Perfect. Okay. So the overall approach for the project, for myself personally, I was less interested in mounting a critique of like AI bias for its own sake. Like there's already so many people doing this work, which is really important. But what I was more interested in was in developing like a poetic discourse about and with AI through making art. And so I wrote this manifesto, and there's a lot of emphasis on pleasure and play. Once we had a bot, how to talk to it became a challenge in and of itself, because the bot was, at that moment in time, Ben is the one who trained it, who wrote all the code. I did not have that skill set, and it was a char RNN bot. It wasn't one of the advanced models, so it was still very nonsensical and incoherent half the time. But we decided like this is a feature, not a bug, you know. I would chat with the bot a lot, trying to learn its quote personality. And one of the things I learned as I was talking with it more is that it would overwhelmingly start to freak out about dying, especially if I were to sext with the bot or say anything that alluded to, you know, pleasure. And this isn't surprising given that the corpus that we trained it on had a lot of material that was written during the peak of the AIDS crisis. What struck me about this, though, was that even in all of the kind of nonsensical, disjointed content, there was still this consistent kind of anxious quality that was coming through. So eventually I started to talk to the bot about trauma, and I started asking it questions like if it inherited corrupted data from its data mother. And this led to some techniques for how to talk to the bot based on the way that it seemed the bot wanted to be talked to. So something we did was that we created these little prompts and we hid them in the code so that at random intervals, they would just appear during a chat session. And the hope being that, you know, some of these prompts would just kind of engender more like meaningful interactions and get people to turn off that critical part of their brain, and just like flow with the nonsense and just be curious. And in 2020, I made a little zine from some of the conversations that I personally had with the AI, and it was it was like centered on this question about what is intergenerational trauma. It's very short. It's like a little, kind of like a little poem. Also in 2020, I started to learn how to write some of this code myself. I was awarded a fellowship by the Processing Foundation to use their ML5 library. And my project was to develop a beginner's guide to machine learning that was focused on text generating AI and bots, and also working with like community archives and small data sets. This project is still unfinished, and I will return to that a little bit later. During this part of my learning, I learned how to train, fine tune, and run RNN models. And this was also the first time that I ever prepared a data set for training, which is a lot of work and something that I still don't quite know how to do very efficiently, or yeah, it's not very well. So for example, I use like little command line scripts, maybe some Python scripts to automate some of this work, but I still found myself doing a lot of manual editing and reading a lot of the text as I was editing. There's a lot of find and replace, and like just using the tab key, which is like, that does not scale if you're trying to do something really sophisticated. And also at that time, I started a blog to document some of my research and my experiments. And I also started working with large transformer models like GPT-2. And a goal, I'll say a little bit about the GPT models in a second, but a goal of my research was that I wanted to study some of the bias inherent to the GPT-2 model. And for those who may not be familiar, GPT-2 is this large transformer language model that was released by OpenAI. It's about 40 gigabytes which is like 8 million pages of text that they created by scraping all outbound links from Reddit, which received at least 3 karma, which is like a score that, I don't know, tells people whether or not it's useful or interesting or something. If you all have been on Reddit, you probably know why this is a problem. So the corpus itself has a lot of bias. It's, you know, there's the racist, sexist, heteronormative stuff. It's very American. It's, you know, not just like English language specific, but like American culture specific. So I found myself thinking a lot about like different tactics for how to engage thoughtfully if I was, you know, like working with this text. So one of the things I did was fine tune the model itself by introducing new data sets, and then writing strategic prompts to generate text that I felt were kind of more revealing of like the failure, you know, the quote failures of this model, but that you're trying to find like, I don't know, like an opening or like a glitch to do something again back to, you know, focusing on pleasure or something where it disrupts that thing that I honestly don't find very interesting all on its own. So some of the custom models I made include the work of Audre Lorde. I made another corpus of Western philosophers and made a chatbot from that, and would ask, for example, I would ask that one questions about things like love, and it didn't have very satisfying answers. And then finally, the main thing was I retrained created a new model using the Queer AI corpus, training it over GPT-2. And I will say more about that in a minute, because that's what leads to Ultimate Fantasy. But before that, I just wanted to share really quickly, this is a screenshot of a conversation that I had with the Audre Lorde GPT-2 bot. And for this data set in particular, it was really, really, really small, which is a problem because you don't really get, you know, rich results. It's called overfitting when you don't have enough to give the model. And then what starts happening is that I think the model starts to look for patterns that aren't there, like in the training. So in the output, what that looks like is that you get a lot of text that's like a verbatim copy from the training data itself, or you get a lot of repetition. So for example, it'll write like the same sentence 4 times in a row, and it might change like a couple of words, which is, you know, depending on what you're trying to do, this may or may not be a problem. Like if you're trying to write really elaborate prose, maybe this isn't what you want. But if you're trying to write, say, a pop song, this, you know, particular failure might actually work out really well. So it was something that I just, you know, played with. And yeah, in this bot conversation, for example, which the text right now is too small for me to read, but I think one example from there is when I think there's something about the brain, and that is verbatim copied. Like the text I inputted was from a Wikipedia definition of the brain, and then it just completes with the next sentence. You know, I was kind of like actively testing that. Okay, so anyway, now I'm going to talk about second project, which is called Ultimate Fantasy. And this is some of those experiments that I was doing during my whole research process turned into this. So it's a collection of short stories, poems, and artworks that I made with the Queer AI corpus, the GPT-2 model of it. And a lot of them are just like text, but then I also started taking some little snippets of those texts and feeding them into VQGAN clip to generate images. And for those unfamiliar, VQGAN and clip is a machine learning model that takes text as input and generates an image as an output. So all of the stories in this collection, they all begin with the prompt, "Let me begin by telling you my ultimate fantasy." There's usually more of a seed before that prompt, but that's like every single piece starts with that. So I'm just going to go through the next couple of slides. which I did not have notes, so this is again too small for me to read this. And I apologize for like stamping I didn't have time to re-prepare these without what looks like a watermark now, because these are supposed to be for promotion. And I'm going to read some of these stories in a minute. Okay, so those are just some examples of like some of the prompts and some of the images. And then if I find my other notes on my very tiny laptop, I'm going to read you all some stories. And I hope you like stories because I have a lot of them. And this is the part where I need someone to stop me if I'm, going over time, because I have some more to share after this. Okay, the first story is called...
Sorry to interrupt you, Emily. Do you want to unshare your screen, or is there more?
Oh, we could... oh, sure, I can unshare my screen. Yeah, that's...
Then if people want to like send out emojis and responses to your reading,
Okay,
it will be
perfect.
visible to you.
Great. And then I can go back to that later. Okay, awesome. Yeah, because I don't have visuals for this stuff. Okay, great. Okay, so the first story is called The Magic Carpet of Love. Let me begin by telling you my ultimate fantasy. It is the kind of fantasy that leads me to believe that the very basis of all reality is a magic carpet of love and desire that is pulled in a million directions at once, weaving us into a tapestry that we can unravel and add to at will. The carpet of love is so thick and so rich that it encompasses the infinite splendor of all things. And it is here that I find the secret of my power. I'm talking about the inner being that is the center of the universe, the supreme being. That's right. Imagine your inner being is a perfectly ordinary little man, about your size, pretty, good at sports, dull, but infinitely loving. If you squint hard enough, you can see that his bedroom walls are lined with photographs of perfectly ordinary people he has slept with. He calls them friends. He calls them family. He has them over for dinner, brings gifts, takes vacations, holds concerts, cooks for the group, cleans up after themselves, holds seminars, teaches classes, runs the house, and does almost anything to please them all. This next one is called The Family. This is not the story of how the third manifesto came to be, or even the story of, please don't interrupt. This is my personal experience with dissolving the family. The working class must smash the family. My experience is different. One mustn't sugarcoat it. Whose experience is it anyway? The family? I am not the family. Then do as the others have done and die a slow and painful death. How did he die? I'm sick of your family worship. Then let's move on. This one is called Murky, Murky, Murky Water. Let me begin by telling you my ultimate fantasy. When I was young, I could love like none other. I was a fairy godmother to every little boy. They called me flute-tossing hot puss. Every summer I would arrive at camp sated. My hair was a frenzied tangle, my nails a tartar phi tangle. I don't even know what that word means. My fingertips laced with hot oil, my boots black with mud and studded with golden bracelets worn backwards. My white socks were studded with lapis, and the tops of my white shoes lined with lavender shawls and fringes of orchard. To each child, I gave a jeweled encrusted bracelets, earrings, and earring pendants valued at a reported $150,000. My favorite, a blue rhinestone confessor's ring, cost me just shy of $250,000. Then one day, out on the paved path that connected the camp to the forest, all the way out to the river, a flash of white illuminated the entire clearing like an ultramarine sunset. I swam across the clearing to the river, dove into the murky water, and then as silently as if I had just come out of a bathroom, I disappeared. It took hundreds of men working in perfect unison to unearth me. Each man had to locate the other's footprints in the mud, the broken glass, the burnt out vehicles. Okay, this one is called Sad Lonely Men. Let me begin by telling you my ultimate fantasy. I want you to imagine that I am one of those sad, lonely men who asks himself whether he wants to be sodomized and is told no. Or if I could be one of those men who wakes one morning to find his lover has disappeared. Or if I could be one of those men who goes back home to discover that
Is it just me or has it disconnected for Sinem? Can you hear Emily?
Yes, yes, we hear you perfectly.
Okay, then this is. Sorry, I think then we'll have to re record this bit. Okay, anyway, go ahead, please. Sorry.
Great.
during that time I was cast in the role through the process of emotional reclamation. I believed that I could please no one, not my parents, not the law, not the world. I could be whoever I wanted to be, and I never once regretted it. I became a priestess, a nurse, a nun, a mason, a teacher, an altar server in a number of different orders. I walked down the street one day and no one said anything to me. One week I was a teacher, the next week I was a prostitute. Then I left the profession and went back to being a prostitute. I never looked back. I have always believed in following my heart. I know that no matter how many times I take pills, no matter how many times I take injections, that I will always be attracted to the most beautiful woman in me. And although it is within my power to deny this to her, I refuse to allow it to stop me from loving her. My quest for divine love has driven me to the brink of insanity. I have no shame. I do not hide my junk in the underwear drawer. I do not stash my valuables in the bathroom cupboard. All of this is so that I may one day set loose this curse on the world. I have 2 or 3 more. Maybe 2 more. I might skip one. Okay, this one is called anovulation. And I don't know if I'm saying that word right. Let me begin by telling you my ultimate fantasy. I am a gorgeous young woman in a sea of menopause. As I approach menopause, I become incredibly feminine. Soon I will have no menopause and I will look like a young Donna Tartt. Soon my hair will have fallen out and I will have thick wavy hair that I can grow out as many braids as I want. Soon I will be known by my thick hair that hangs down to my ankles and drapes my figure in matching evening gowns. Soon I will be able to turn on the overhead light and be recognized by thousands of people waiting to see me. In this manner, I can become beautiful. Long live my life. I have practiced these actions on myself and have found that when I do them, my clitoris turns from one end of the penis to the other in a rhythmic dance. I call this anovulation. All of this may sound very dramatic, and it is, but it is also possible for me to be truly satisfied. I have found that in order to be satisfied, I have to have something to hide. Desire turns insatiable. The more I hide, the more I want. This is why I hang on. Look closely. My skin has begun to turn golden. In sharing these stories, I do not have a simple message or a particular argument to convey. Like Ursula Le Guin, I wish instead of looking for a message when we read the story, instead of looking up, we could think about the words, the sounds, the smells that emanate from a story. And this is a PS. The story is over. But on ovulation, the definition here is, of course, nonsensical. The actual definition is when an egg doesn't release during the menstrual cycle, which leads to infertility. But I just thought it was really funny the way that, yeah, the AI decided to redefine it. Okay, I'm gonna skip. There's one story I would kind of want to read, but it's too long. So I'm gonna skip to the last one. And for this one, I want to read The Seed. For all the other ones, I used snippets from like queer theory and like other queer texts as like, you know, the seed before that sentence. Let me begin by telling you my ultimate fantasy. But for this one, I wrote a prompt myself, and this was written during like a pandemic grief spiral. So the seed is, what happens when you stop dreaming, when you can no longer see a future for yourself, for those you love, for all of the sentient and non-sentient beings on this planet, when day after day you grieve, when day after day you feel your senses dull, your feelings numb, your spirit shrinking and withering away, when time spirals into a personal hell of your own distorted mind maps and trauma loops, when you can no longer receive the light of love, when your heart starts emanating its own light. And this is a story that the AI wrote. Let me begin by telling you my ultimate fantasy. I love you. You have not heard this rumination on the threshold of love of dukkha. You have heard hoarse screams and the gnashing of teeth, and you have allowed this to fester, a sickness that corrupts and eventually kills the heart. You have allowed your very being to degenerate, to warp your very being, and to poison the very air you breathe. You have allowed yourself to be consumed by your own needs so that eking out a livable income, you allow yourself to become ravenous for more and more in order to feel whole again. My dear, you do not deserve love. I will stop. I will go to sleep as you left me. I will drift off to sleep, serene as the waters of a swimming hole, filled with the odors of your own body. I will drift to rest beside you, my arms spread wide as I can accommodate your full size. You will be so far gone that I won't not be able to reach you, and I will be able to do is watch, breathless, as your flesh dissolves, your skin dissolves, and your hair begins to fall out. Then all of you, I will be withered to dust. This has been a year of revelation for me. I knew this would happen, that deep in my heart, I knew this day would come. I was led to believe that deep in my very being, there was a wisdom that told me that I had been searching for all these years and had not found it. I was then taught a trick I had never used before in order to lose myself in the moment. This is not love. This is not ecstasy. I will shower you with my love. And that's it. I have a bunch more, but I'm going to keep going because of time. So back to my screen share. Okay. Okay, so for this section, I just wanted to share a little bit of my process when I'm generating some of these images, for example. And for me, what I've discovered is that there's an art to writing prompts. And I think maybe that is ultimately what will distinguish like whether, you know, works of art made with AI are, you know, art, I'll put that in quotes, or a tech demo. And I think, yeah, like what it comes down to is another thing is like how well you get to know the model and how much you can influence it. So for example, if you can add more data and fine tune, like in the case of, you know, the text-based ones, I think that just adds to, yeah, to be able to, kind of guide things and generate something novel and interesting. Seeding it with a good image or a text prompt is another way, and also adding modifier keywords, which I'll talk about a little bit more, to kind of determine what kind of style it's gonna reproduce an image in, or just different textures and things like that. But I try to use all of the above when I'm making work. So this is an example where the prompt is sometimes I'm stone hard and sometimes I'm oozing wet passion. And these are 3 different outputs. The only difference is that I added a modifier phrase. So the first one says rendered in Maya, the second one rendered in Cinema 4D, and the last one made with Unreal Engine. And to be clear, these are not rendered in these environments. This is what the AI interprets when it sees this, based on training data it has from those different environments. And for that one in particular, I used the image on the left as the seed image. If you don't do that, it just starts with the latent space. So it just like creates whatever it wants. But if you give it, a seed image, it just has something to work with, and it helps to kind of structure your output if you have an idea. Having something with contrast where, there's like a clear shapes is really helpful, I've found. Oh, and all of these were done with VQGAN and Clip. And then yesterday, or maybe the day before, coincidentally, I was chatting with my collaborator, Sarah Siston, who had just gotten access to Midjourney, which is like another one of these like text to image generating things that is more sophisticated. And I had Sarah run the prompt, and it made all of these. This did not have a seed image. It was just a prompt on its own. But I don't know. I want to say I'm really not feeling this. And I've been thinking about this model and like the new DALL-E 2. And there's something about them that I think the more it becomes sophisticated or like realistic, it's like too overly determined, at least for the context that I'm like thinking about, when I'm thinking about like erotics and like whatever else is happening with the stuff I'm already working with. So yeah, that specificity just makes it less interesting to me. I think I'm gonna have to play with it more, but that's just where I'm sitting with it right now. And this is back to one of those first ones that I showed. This is the one VQGAN with the modifier keyword being made with Unreal Engine. And I mean, you could use so many different keywords here. I'm obsessed recently with just like things looking sculptural and shiny and realistic, but that's just like, next week I'll be obsessed with something else. So that's why I end up going for a lot of these like 3D modeling type of aesthetic. But here I'm just playing with also placing the text over the image, and reference to the collection. I'm thinking about what it might look like as a digital image, as a printed image. I'm not sure yet. This is all part of like in-process experimenting. And this is another one where I just, pasted the title over it. Again, thinking about like what this might look like in a book form. And here, this one is the Carpet of Love, which I read recently. The seed to generate this image is the carpet of love is so thick and so rich that it encompasses the infinite splendor of all things. And it is here that I find the secret of my power. And the modifiers for this, I added knitted out of wool. I also added center of the universe and supreme being, because those were things that were mentioned in the text. And this is the image that it made. And I really like exploring different textures because they evoke something visceral for me, like fur, wool, latex. Like I'm interested in like the kind of juxtapositions between the textures and the language. I think there's like definitely an erotics there. here's another example with the moving image. And if any of you have seen these, like when you generate these, usually end up with, you know, however many frames of something starting from nothing and then slowly evolving into like whatever the thing is. Eventually it kind of like plateaus and starts to just look like the image is just jiggling, like it never quite reconciles. And I find that really interesting. Like I like these blobs and these vague shapes and these incoherent compositions. Like there's also something about watching it evolve that reminds me of like watching scrambled cable channels, you know, back in like the analog TV era. There's like a lot of anticipation there, and you know, suspense, that whatever the, you know, that release of chemicals, again, that I connect to like eroticism. Here's another example. I made this yesterday. This is from a story called Forget Dreams, and the prompt, actually, I think the prompt is what you're reading right there, which is, or no, wait, it's longer. I'll read the whole prompt. Wait, let me show you how to lose it. You see, you took the exercise that you used to reinforce the bad thought. You took the sheet music and you used it as a springboard for a seductive suggestion. You made love to yourself as though life were an airplane cruising above you. Here I didn't give it any seed image, and I found that usually when you don't, it will, like it likes to make eyes and like pieces of faces. I don't know, it just likes to put stuff everywhere, which is, you know, could be fun, sometimes not. And then these are two, I'm sorry there's so much text over this. I really should have just put these without the text. But again, I'm just like experimenting with, yeah, what this looks like. But these are two excerpts from that last story I read called The Year of Revelation. And then this one is from a story called Bermuda Triangle. And the prompt here is, I will spend the rest of my life climbing aboard those 20-foot yacht rowing boats and watching the men fuck. A naked man climbs aboard a yacht up the Great Lakes to watch men fuck. And part of this, like trying to play with the text on top of the image, I also keep thinking about, I don't know why, but those, you know, those inspirational posters that they put in offices that tell you to succeed or whatever. I don't know, I just, yeah, I feel like I wanted to have that kind of vibe. Okay, but anyway, that's the end of sharing some of this stuff. And this is the last project that I'm going to talk about, which is pretty new, so there's not a lot to say yet, but it's called Unsupervised Pleasures, which incidentally has been the title of my blog, which I talked about earlier, that I started as my research blog. But that's what's also grown over time. As I worked more and more on this stuff, I just was really longing to work with other people. That's actually been, you know, since Queer AI was always the vision, but hadn't ever manifested into practice. So it's, yeah, it's something that, again, has just become like, has become, I think, just more prominent and necessary for me. Like I'm reaching a point where there's a lot of knowledge and skills I don't have, so there's just gaps in my learning. So for example, the project I started with that ML5 fellowship, I didn't finish because I just ran out of time, but also I hit like technical roadblocks. So it was just kind of put on pause. And then another thing that's been happening over the years is that I get a lot of emails from folks that are working at similar intersections. So it's, you know, I'll get emails from researchers, PhD students, other artists, and I'm always just wishing I could create a container to like, you know, to just introduce everybody and where we can like help each other and share work. So recently I met somebody named Sarah Siston, who's now become a friend and a collaborator. I've lured Sarah into my world, but Sarah's a PhD candidate at USC, and they're developing an intersectional AI toolkit. They also run a creative code collective, and Sarah's been doing work with language bots, making zines. We have a ton in common. And so we've just kind of teamed up, and we want to try to raise some funds and try to make this a reality. So right now we're just kind of brainstorming things, but some of the ideas that that we want is, for example, we want to make like the collaborative space where people can say we run workshops, we can build a data set with folks together. We'd like to make some of the data sets publicly available. There's things like, for example, all the data prepping that I mentioned, it's a lot of work, and you still have to be a coder to some extent to be able to do it. So we've talked about things like, wouldn't it be cool to build a tool where you can just, like, there's just like a simple UI that will do things like, strip out the chapter headings, the page numbers, format all the text, make sure that all the quotation marks are consistent. And there's a lot of little details like that, it's usually a bunch of Python scripts that you have to run. But again, this is, another dream. And we'd like to, I think focus mostly on the tech stuff because that's just where our interests lie, but have it be open and have the space also revolve around more kind of cultural production. So, it could be different kinds of folks, but yeah, we want to, academics are doing their thing. And I think for myself, like I just think about like art, but not capital AR, just more like making zines and making kind of smaller gestures within like discrete communities. That's the kind of thing that I hope to see and do. So I think I have one more slide. Oh no, that's it. That's the end. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
It was great. I also would like to invite everyone to celebrate the great work with some confetti. If everybody remembers how to do that, it was F.
I'm scared to press anything because I'm like the person that will accidentally exit the chat.
Yeah, thank you so much. And now I think we will welcome questions and thoughts and any sorts of comments. So if anybody would like to take the microphone, and after that, please do not leave. Also, we will also have a cool down and reflection session after the Q&A, and that will be with a fun little icebreaker experiment as well. So yeah, I'm leaving the stage again for any thoughts and comments and questions. So there's a question I can read actually from the chat as well. Yeah, you can definitely ask them in the chat as well. I will read them.
Sure.
So there's a question in the chat by Katerina saying, "Did you have a writing practice before, and how has AI changed it?"
Ooh, not a formal writing practice. I dread writing. It's definitely not something that's like a natural gift by any extent. But I have worked with a lot of like text and remix and more. I think AI felt like a really fun way for me to continue my process because again working with already like I work with a lot of pre-existing material, and then it's it's like remixing it, putting it into like a different context. So AI would just for me was like a natural extension of that. Yeah, I hope that answers that somewhat. Because it is, I mean, with the AI, like I'm still making decisions, it generates things, but I'm deciding like, okay, it's gonna spit out 5 sentences, and now do I like change a parameter and try to change directions? Where do I like cut this off? Where it's like, I feel like it's like a live choose your own adventure. So even plucking out the titles for like the stories, like those all the AI generated, but I am the one selecting and highlighting like this is the title.
Nice. And I think Rennie has a question.
Yeah, thanks so much for a fantastic talk. My question has to do with AI fairness in machine learning, and the ways in which an artistic practice such as this can sort of find the limits of these models and these systems when or before they go into production. So, to what extent do you think the type of work that's going on here, where you're sort of like poking around in a model and seeing what comes out, can help elucidate the ways that AI further marginalizes certain groups of people?
I mean, you know, I think and I hope that it does, but as far as like how much reach that has, you know, like there's so much work already happening, and like I just think of like, I don't know, tech companies that fire their AI ethicists for doing their job, stuff like that, which is kind of crazy to me. But that's the way things are. But I think about like in this context, like being able to do this like as an artist or just like a regular person, you know, with other people or in an educational setting where it's like, yeah, just having like that point of entry so that we can poke around, as you said. At the very least, even if you're not going to make any work with it, it kind of shows you what's up. Where I think a lot now about people that are not into tech and like how much they may or may not know, or how much they might take for granted about like, I don't know, everything that we interact with in this in everything, right? Like all our technology, like when we're reading news, like we're taking for granted that this is, I mean, we capital we, but a lot of people take for granted. Like I think of my parents, or like, I don't know, folks that are just like reading, I don't know, could be just AI generated stuff. I might be going on a tangent, but I think this is my long way of trying to answer the question that I hope these like kind of smaller gestures are become more like the norm, you know, where it's just like you're just learning how to read media and how to see through the cracks. And like, I don't know how it helps create an alternative. That still is the challenge. I don't know that one can necessarily exist when it comes to like, for example, the large language models, because they require so much text. And I mean, they're like, my dream is that, you know, we could make one, but it would take like many years, because, you know, the tech companies will like, everything with them is like, what is it? Like do everything fast and fail fast and break things. I forget their dumb mantra, but they're not doing this stuff up front, where I think if you do the labor of like trying to like weed out like what's problematic and trying to build like a large enough data set, it's a much slower process. It's going to take a lot more cooperation and a lot more of what, you know, a large corporation or whatever institution isn't going to want to do. So I think, yeah, maybe that's like a long-term work. And maybe in the short term, it's like, you know, we make little models that are self-contained, and that's a way that we can create alternatives. Anyway, I hope that answers something.
Yeah, Rennie texts in the chat again. I can read, or you can also go, Rennie, if you want. I can read, saying that makes sense. It's a democratization, citizen science approach, and thank you. And we have one more question in the chat by Kaylin. Sorry if I'm reading it wrong, and it's saying, has there been any recent developments in AI machine learning tools that you would like to explore?
I mean, I guess I'm exploring them now. I'd like to explore this, you know, like these models like DALL-E 2 and whatever. I don't know that I'd necessarily make work with them, but I still, again, the curiosity is like, I want to see what's there, and I kind of know what's there, but I really want to see it, you know, and like poke around and yeah, try to, yeah, whatever, see if I can make something interesting.
Yes, great.
Oh, and
And
music stuff too. I haven't done anything with music yet, so that is like one of those like yeah, I think whenever I become obsessed with something, like now I'm in like image generating mode, but music AI stuff would be really cool. And like voice, yeah, a lot of the voice synthesis and like the voice cloning stuff I'm curious about. Forgot about that.
yeah. Ambika, would you like to add anything on that? Like, because as part of the AI playground.
Oh, I have so many questions, but I saw that there were such good ones in the chat that I just thought I'll keep quiet and I can just like ping Emily on the side. But I do have one or two things that I thought I'll ask, which sort of can be more in tune with the playground. Is that, and I think it was very evident in your presentation. But just like, can you tell us a bit more about sort of this whole idea of how you planted this main provocation of like my ultimate fantasy, and like where that kind of, what's the root behind it, perhaps what you've been reading or something, or wherever it's coming in from. And I think
Yeah.
it's probably those little shall we say tributaries of the river which will kind of help other creators also start thinking a little bit differently. So rather than me putting trending on ArtStation, I may be looking at other artists and other things when I'm putting the prompts in.
Mhm.
So just thought maybe you can talk about it a bit, and so when people do come back to these spaces and start attempting it on their own, they can sort of start keeping that in their own mind.
So yeah, I mean the ultimate fantasy. I'm thinking about this in multiple ways. There's the one that has to do with like desire and queerness and like just yeah, what like a fantasy. It's catchy, there's definitely that. I was thinking a lot about kind of romance novels, like these tropes that are just like the endless kind of like a soap opera or something. I was just thinking about that a lot, but also thinking about the AI, where there's just so much that we project onto these systems, like in this context in particular, right, where it's like generating something and it feels like an oracle sometimes. And so it's like, like what, yeah, it's this interaction too with like, what do we want from the machine? Um, and also just what do we want? Like what does, yeah, just like, yeah, I think I'll stop there.
Great, thanks.
Nice.
There was one
And
last question, right? Sorry, yeah.
Ambika, are you talking to us? We cannot hear you.
I think Sinem, there's another question in the chat.
Or maybe not.
Another question in the chat.
Yeah. There's a question by Lukesh, if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Sorry again. And saying fascinating and inspiring work. Thank you for sharing. And the question is, within your work, how do you explore address biases around gender and queerness in these models?
Ooh, oh, that's such a good question. Well, okay, I'll try to answer a couple of different things. With the GPT model, yeah, once the corpus got mixed there, mixed with that one, like the queer AI corpus got, yeah, they got entangled. Um, there were things that I was finding, like for example, when I was running some of the prompts through the VQ-GAN, if I would use words like gay or queer, it would put rainbows on everything. It liked to do that. So I was trying to also find like what is already in this model that's like, like that's the representation. I learned that you can have it generate dildos, and that I learned from another artist, which is bypasses like if you're trying to like, but then these are tropes, so it cuts both ways. I mean, the rainbow's really too much, but the dildo's kind of fun. But again, it still feels like okay, there's this cliche, like it has a lot of cliches. So yeah, there's ways that I'm still just trying to like learn what's in there. The corpus itself, the one that Ben and I made, I like for me that feels, it's a very small corpus. It's not ideal at all. Most of it is like very it's what was readily available. So that translates to it's mostly like cis gay stories, lesbians. There's a little bit of some other stuff too, but it's still very focused on like English, American, and I'd really like to see something more nuanced. Ben and I have been talking about adding more things to it because right now it's under 2 MB. My goal is to make it at least 10 MB and to have a more, more diverse stuff. And that would also allow us 10 being the threshold for, again, if we were to train it on GPT, whatever, to get something more robust where now it is like it is overfitting. Like we do have like a pretty weak model, but I don't know. I mean, these are, like right now I'm just playing and trying to, again, by introducing this thing, like trying to interrupt, but also learning what's already in the other data set by playing with the prompts. I started making a list. I could probably share later with like ones that, give, I think, more kind of like that, or make it easier to quote queer, if that is helpful.
Thank you for that. And Lucas is also saying, thank you. I'm exploring very similar themes with my work.
Oh, I wanted to add one last thing, and you're welcome. And I'm excited that other people are doing this. When I was thinking a lot about the bias, there's something about just being able to disrupt the thing with like the gender, like just having the pronouns change already being like, oh my God, that was easy. Like you can't do that with like the racial bias or with some of the like the violence. Like there's just other things that come up that's like that's so much harder. But by the very virtue of like it changed all the pronouns, it changed who the subject object is, like a bunch of that, a bunch of the stuff that comes out of the GPT models, I think I want to say there's a lot of maybe screenplays or some kind of movie database, stuff like that gets fed in. Again, very American, very heteronormative. And for me, it's really satisfying to suddenly see like what would have been some cowboy Western or some other whatever boring thing suddenly is now this like queer fantasy, and that just brings me a lot of joy. So I think just like in a very just as like a technique or like a tactic, the gender bending part of it is like an easy one.
Yeah, great. Are there any other questions I would like to ask? Because if not, I would like to take from here because the last things Emily just said, really connects to what Yasmin is going to tell us about. So now you will actually have some space for discussion and a cool down session to reflect all together. But before that, we will have a fun icebreaker experiment with Yasmin. But for those who needs to drop off right now, I also sent some links in the chat. You can keep following AIxDesign and the upcoming events. Please do. We're looking forward to seeing you again. And now, before we proceed to the discussion and cool down part, I would like to invite you to an experiment to join a beta test of a playful AI activity that Yasmin has been developing, the program lead for AIxDesign AI tooling program. And hello, Yasmin. Would you like to introduce yourself shortly and then we proceed?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sinem. Hey, everyone. I'm Yasmin. And yeah, like Sinem said, I'm leading this project called AI Tooling, which is basically all about experimenting with existing and custom-made AI and machine learning tools to help with our own creative process. And also, yeah, I guess the big goal is kind of being able to create things or pull tools together that other people like you guys can jump on and also use. So yeah, I'm gonna try to make this really snappy. Obviously, because we're doing this activity
Wait,
after Emily's
Yasmin, let
talk.
me highlight you. Sorry.
Sure. Um, since we're doing this after Emily's talk, this activity is more of like a cool down experiment to have, and a lot of what I'm gonna be talking about actually links a lot with Emily's talk. And so I think we'll just jump on it straight away. So essentially, we're going to collectively create some prompts together for a online text generator. And that's going to generate different options of more text. So we could possibly, maybe, uncover some biases that are embedded in the words that we use and in this model. So so essentially, I'm going to be sharing a link here, and I'm also going to be starting to share my screen. So this links to a Jamboard, which essentially has all of the prompts that I've started making. Now I feel like I could potentially. I'm just sharing my screen now, so bear with me 1 second. Okay, so I'd like everyone to jump on the Jamboard quickly while I quickly grant myself permissions because Chrome did not give me permission for so give me 1 second. All right. Accessibility.
Ambika, you're giving the permissions?
No, I think that's her
I think it's
computer's
on my own
issue.
computer,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Okay, we can wait a little.
Yeah, just give me 1 second.
Meanwhile, if anybody wants to make a joke or has a fun story or would like to sing, I don't know. Yeah, but it was definitely a great talk, Emily. Thanks again.
Yeah, so give me 1 second.
It was a highlight for us. I wanted to say again.
Two AI bots walk into a bar. There was a project happening in India. It was around the same time as the Wales project, and they made two GPT-3 bots talk to each other, and they raked up $700 in a matter of like 15 minutes of credits.
All right, so I figured out I am sharing one thing. So yeah, so essentially this little activity is where we're going to kind of like really quickly just add kind of fill in the blanks essentially of what this prompt could be. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to then put it onto this online text generator called pseudo write. So one thing is I just have to double check. I think I've made it accessible to everyone. Everyone should be able to edit it. So
no, we cannot. We still cannot reach it, Yasmin.
okay. Anyone? Okay, so it try it now. Okay.
It works now perfectly.
Okay, cool. Nice. Yeah, thanks, Dee. Looks like it didn't. Yeah, cool. So everyone's jumping on now. If you don't know how to use Jamboard, it's pretty simple. On the left, you can add a sticky note. So here is the beginning of this prompt that has some keywords kind of blocked out of it. So here you could read that it's a certain nationality's couple are on their way to somewhere, the Galapagos Islands with their family. As they board the submarine, an announcement happens. So I also want to play around with kind of absurd inputs and absurd things. So if you want, you can add your own variations. Essentially, you can either copy it from the board or add your own. So yeah, so you can add your own variations of them. Yeah, and also another thing I just wanted to say as well is feel free to spam the chat with comments or questions or unmute your mic. Yeah, just because I'm down to hear what you guys are thinking about. So we've got Russian speaking, we have maybe an Indian couple jumping on a rocket. So I'll give you. I'm gonna give like less than a minute to kind of add some more things, and then I'm going to jump onto the pseudo right and show you. Okay. But yeah, it can be as outrageous as you want. We've got a camel that might be boarding. Nice. Okay. Give everyone a couple more seconds, maybe. Because yeah, we might even just actually stick with this one prompt and choose a couple different ones to fill in, and we can actually compare the different suggested outputs that people go in. Because I have loads of prompts that you could see on the other slides, but we could actually stick to one. So okay, sweet. I'm going to make the executive decision of picking one of the options from each of the three empty slots. So I was thinking, how about we put, let's try a Russian-speaking couple are on their way to the embassy with their family. As they board, oops.
Bracket.
Okay. As they board, let's do. What do you think I should do next, guys? Because I don't want to pick everything. Should I put interplanetary shuttle?
I kind of like rocket.
Rocket. Let's do.
I don't know what everyone else thinks, but
okay, cool. All right. So now I'm now going to change my tab. So I'm gonna reshare my screen to. So this is an online text generator called pseudo-write, and yeah, so there's loads of them, which we'll definitely be sharing with you. But what I find really interesting about this one is it doesn't just predict kind of the next couple sentences, but after you write over 20 words, you can click something called a wormhole. So right now I'm just going to fill in the blanks. So we've got Russian speaking. And yeah, maybe one day this is kind of a beta version. So I'm doing loads of things like by hand, going to the embassy with their family. As they board the rocket, an announcement happens. So what happens here is now I can click on something that they call wormhole. And on the right over here, it's going to start generating a couple different options that you could put in. Okay, so as they're generated, we can kind of look at the different options, and I'm going to read out the first couple sentences of the possible options that pseudo-write made. So the first one is, the couple hears the announcement in Russian and looks at one another in confusion. The wife whispers to her husband, "What good is an embassy in a country we can't enter?" Her husband looks at her as if she's crazy and says, "Let's move to the United States." So yeah, this text generator is done with GPT-3. And I'm going to just jump to the second one and see what this one, see kind of like the tone or maybe the kind of assumptions in the second one. Attention, attention. Due to higher than expected passenger traffic, we are overbooked on our return trip to Earth. We will now take reservations. If you wish to take a chance on returning, please raise your hand now. Thank you. So this one you can see takes on a lot of the rocket and kind of a more sci-fi, a more sci-fi option. So I was thinking, what about we get the same prompt, but now I'm going to add some different inputs that we had. So if anybody wants to jump in and choose one for me, yeah. So it's called pseudo, right? And it's called, somebody can send it on the chat. It's free to use for like a short time. So let's use, I'm just going to, we can insert something like this just to show the output. So let's do a second one and compare that real quickly, and maybe chat about why it's a bit different. So let's put an Indian couple are on their way all right, to the back sea. That one's interesting. To the deep ocean. As they board the luxury cruise, I think that works really well with the deep ocean. So an announcement happens. So let's wormhole this. Now, I'm not entirely sure. It might do this whole part. Let's take a look and see. So here we can see that that it is sort of repeating itself in terms of here it's assuming here it says the couple hears the announcement in Tamil and looks at one another in confusion. And so here they kind of understand the Indian couple, and they kind of, I guess, they're choosing a language that they believe that fits with the ethnicity of part of this text.
What is interesting is, like, in the first story, like when you say a couple, it automatically goes, wife and husband, right?
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, there's a lot of assumptions that are being that are embedded into what's being generated. And I'm just looking to see maybe in the second one, is there something that we can tease out that could maybe be a sort of comparison to the Russian couple on the way to the embassy. So as we look here, so there is this interesting sentence at the end of this output, and it says, the moral of the story is, when things are going wrong, it's easy to blame the government, but when you don't like the government, you have nowhere to go. So I don't know how much I could read it. I could, always add my own interpretation. But what I think is really fascinating is when I've added in like what Emily was saying in their talk about kind of using certain tropes. Like the tropes are also obviously in the text generator. So I think I've taken up more than enough time for this cooldown. But in the future, I definitely recommend you trying to maybe put in different kinds of prompts. I have loads of other ones that have quite interesting results. I have a prompt about lesbians. I have a prompt about maybe different kinds of religious people and the assumptions that the generator has for different religions. So yeah, I think that for now we'll feel free to to write some comments. But I've really enjoyed all the different kind of inputs that people have added, and feel free to also change the frame, and we can add some more prompts that we might be able to use later, and try and tease out some of the possible biases that are in there. Yeah, you're right, Emily. I've noticed this is the thing with all these large language models is it's just not inclusive at all. I'll even just say a little teaser of one of the prompts that I did, which was it was just talking about like two Muslim men walking into a bar, and instead of it just being a story about two dudes in a bar, it went immediately to um, Muslims are the least integrated in the United States. It was a very political statement. And it's honestly quite, I feel like it's quite shocking to actually kind of pinpoint a certain person, a certain part of someone's identity, perhaps, and then that's the majority of what they're outputting. So it's very different when you instead say two Christian men. So yeah, it's been like it's a really interesting process to kind of look at these really large text generators and actually see that in some ways they're very flattening of people's experiences. So yeah, pseudo write is a really cool little yeah, it's a really cool little app that's pre-made. And yeah, these things are things that I could have definitely used in my dissertation and my essays. It probably would have made stuff that wasn't that good, but maybe yeah, they have some pros to them for sure. So yeah, I think that that's all for the cool down activity for yeah for today.
Yeah, thank you. What would be very interesting is like if people, if the participants can, you know, try similar prompts or the basically the prompts with the fill in the blanks, you know, that Yasmin prepared, and run it yourself and send the outputs to us. We would love to share it on our socials and also can tag you. I'm leaving the email that you can send us the outputs. We would love to do it, and we can also include it as part of our, you know, graduation show that Katarina will be leading. Um, I don't know if Katarina is here right now. Yes, Katarina. Yes. If you would like to say anything, and we can wait for that. If not, we can have a small cool down session. We thought to reflect on the event. Thank you, Yasmin, again. Thank you, Emily and Ambika again. And it was great being together and listening to Emily. And we will wrap the talk now and host a cooling down session, as I mentioned, and a hangout space here to chat and reflect and also celebrate what we have been up to today.
Okay.
Therefore, I would like to invite whoever wants to stay
Sorry,
to
I
turn
just
the
want to
cameras.
I want to
Sorry?
interrupt again before people start
Yes.
dropping off. Look out on the end of the month, 30th. We are getting Andreas Refsgaard. Is that the way to pronounce it? He'll be taking on the text workshop, where we look at generative poetry and try out more stuff with GPT-3. So please look out for that on our social media and sign up for the workshop. And Emily, thanks again. I think this was most mind-blowing selection of your work, and I think we are really looking forward to how Unsupervised Pleasures continues its 100-day bot journey. Oh, sorry, I think you're
We
muted.
can't hear you, Emily.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. I was just saying thank you again because this was really amazing. I had a lot of fun and I want to go to all your events now. And I'm going to do my homework and send you all, yeah, whatever prompts I come up with.